All right, so just a quick run through of some vocabulary and some concepts. Remember, homozygous, homo means the same, and so homozygous, the zygous refers to the fertilized egg. So if it's homozygous for brown fur, then that means it has two identical traits for brown fur. If it's heterozygous, hetero means different, so that means it has different alleles. Maybe one is brown fur, maybe one is black fur. Okay? A trait would be something like hair color, or height, or smoothed pea, or wrinkled pea. An allele are the different forms of the trait. So if you're talking about hair color, that's a trait. If you're talking about brown hair, or blonde hair, or red hair, those are the alleles for that trait. Okay? If you have two dominant traits or two recessive traits, then you are homozygous. If you have one dominant and one recessive, that is heterozygous because they are different. And remember, independent assortment means that your different genes on different chromosomes assort independent of each other. So for example, tallness and seed color in pea plants are on different chromosomes. And so the possible outcome, the possible seeds from this cell, or the possible gametes from this cell, might have two dominant traits, or the two recessive traits, or dominant for tall and recessive for color, and recessive for tall and dominant for color. Okay, so they're independent of each other. Just because you have one doesn't mean you are guaranteed to have the other one. This is a Punnett Square, and so you have the two parents up here. Put one parent here, one parent here. This carries over to these two boxes. This carries over to these two boxes. This comes down to these two boxes, and this comes down to these two boxes. And each one of these boxes is a 25% chance that that genotype will be the offspring. Okay. Phenotype is the physical characteristic. So I remember that physical starts with the pH, and so does phenotype. So the physical phenotype. Genotype starts with gene. So that's the actual genetics at play. So for example, in this Punnett Square, for phenotype, 100% of them, every offspring from these two parents will have the tall dominant gene. Okay? These are heterozygous for tallness, but because the dominant overshadows the recessive, they will phenotypically be tall plants. All right? In terms of genotype, we have 50% homozygous dominant for tallness and 50% heterozygous. Okay. This is just another Punnett Square. Both parents, though, are homozygous recessive. So that means every child will be homozygous recessive. All right. Here's another Punnett Square where you have two heterozygous parents. So we do the Punnett Square, and we find out that phenotypically, 75% of them will be tall and 25% will be short. Now this could be useful because if you want short plants or tall plants, then you could cross these two plants and you will always get short plants. Okay, that's how you get like dwarf varieties of different plants and stuff. All right, genotype though, 25% of them are homozygous dominant. 50% are heterozygous, and 25% are homozygous recessive. Okay. A couple more vocabulary. Dominant means that it overshadows the recessive. The dominant gene is always expressed regardless of what the other gene is. The recessive trait only shows up if it's homozygous recessive. Sex-linked, you have 23 pairs of chromosomes in each of your cells. 22 of those are what we call autosomes. And so they are your body chromosomes. They code for things like hair and eyes and lungs and livers and kidneys and all that stuff. And one set are your sex chromosomes. Genetically speaking, and I'm only speaking about genetics here, XX is female and XY is male. Okay? And so what happens is sometimes there'll be a gene that is only on the X chromosome or only on the Y chromosome. Now, if it's only on the Y chromosome, only men will have it. Okay? You can't be a genetic female and have a gene on the Y chromosome because you don't have a Y chromosome. On the other hand, if it's on the X chromosome, men only have one X chromosome. So if it's a recessive trait like colorblindness, men will automatically show it if they have that gene. A female could have a dominant trait and a recessive trait, and so they will show the dominant trait. And a Punnett square for sex linked, you would have the X and the Y here and the XX here, and you would have their genes. So here we have a colorblind male and a normal vision female. She is homozygous for normal vision. Okay? When they mate, we see that all of the offspring will have normal vision. Both, all the boys, all the girls. Okay? So there is no chance that they could have a colorblind child. However, if a normal vision male and a female who is a carrier of the colorblind gene, excuse me, see, she has normal vision because of this dominant trait, but she's a carrier. Okay? That means that 25%, there's a 25% chance that they will have a male that is colorblind. Because this male, this possibility right here, only has the colorblind gene. Okay. Here we just have different crosses. In this scenario, you were trying to find a possibility, a set of parents that could possibly have a child with a recessive gene. Or a recessive phenotype. And they have no recessive genes at all, so they're out. They have nothing but recessive genes, and they've passed on nothing but recessive genes. But the question told us that the parents were heterozygous. So these parents are not heterozygous, so that is out. This parent is heterozygous, this one is homozygous, and there is no chance that they can have a child that is homozygous recessive. The only way here, of these four choices, this is the only choice that would give you a homozygous recessive child. Possibly. This one was talking about cats, and so coat color in some animals is codominant. Codominant means that the traits show up together. So for example, a cat could just have black fur, or a cat could just have orange fur. Or a cat might have a brown coat color because the black and red are showing up together. Like some hairs are black and some hairs are orange, and that makes the cat look brown. That's codominant. And so if you had a mother who is codominant for the brown pattern and a male that is black, then you would have a 50% chance of a female that is black and a 50% chance of a female that is orange and black or brown. It's orange and black, but it looks brown. You'd have a 50% chance of a black boy or a 50% chance of an orange boy. Please note that since this is sex-linked, You cannot have a brown patterned boy. You can't. A boy cat is either going to be black or orange because they only have one X chromosome. So if you ever see a cat with more than 2 coat colors, like they're orange, black, and white, we call that calico, it's a female cat. All right. So codominant, again, means, excuse me, that both dominant traits show up at the same time. So I tried to draw that here. So you had a parent with squares, a parent with circles, both circles and squares show up. Another way to think about it is if you have a white flower and a red flower, you get a striped flower with red and white stripes. In complete dominance, they combine. So if you have a red flower and a white flower, you end up with a pink flower. Okay? So codominant, both traits show up next to each other. In complete dominance, neither one completely overshadows the other, and so you end up with a blending. We talked about nature versus nurture, or genotype versus the environment. And basically, you know, you might have the genes for being 7 feet tall, but if you eat nothing but Twinkies 24/7, you're probably not going to be 7 feet tall. Your nutrition isn't there. So that's, you know, your genes are saying one thing, but your environment, how you're raised, how you eat, your nutrition, that is saying hopefully the same thing, but it might be saying something else. Now, the other thing is, the other side of it too, if you have the genes for being 4 foot tall and you eat the best possible diet any human could ever eat, you're probably still just going to be 4 feet. Okay? This was a question where they gave you DNA, so you had to transcribe the DNA to RNA and use that mRNA codon to figure out which amino acids were in the protein. And then the one that is different is, because they're different amino acids, this is a different protein with a different function. These 3 codes, 1, 2, and 4, even though they're different DNA codons, they code for the same amino acids. And restriction enzymes cut DNA at certain sequences, and then we can run those sequences through a gel electrophoresis, and then the large pieces of DNA don't travel very far, so they end up very close to the well. And then the smaller pieces of DNA travel farther, and that's how we get DNA fingerprints.